So this is the all-new Triumph Thruxton 400, and when I first heard about it, I've got to admit I wasn't entirely convinced. The main reason is the Thruxton's a bit of a legend, and when you think of the Thruxton, it's a cafe racer, it has low clip-ons, it has a booming twin, and of course it looks like something out of the 1960s. But this... But I think Triumph have done something very special here. If you actually take a step back, it's very handsome. It has great paintwork, it's slim, it looks like a cafe racer, but most importantly, it looks like a Triumph. And that's something Triumph have done really well lately with the Speed 400, the Scrambler 400, the Tracker 400, and now the Thruxton 400. That market in India has taken off, and it shows. The engine is approachable and the chassis is very inspiring. Everything feels very comfortable with this bike. Because that's the best thing. When you open those garage doors or you take the cover off your bike and this is sitting under it, it just puts a little smile on your face. There's a difference as well for the engine to be approachable but not boring, which I think is a very big standout point here from Triumph. This bike also appeals to every single demographic. Whether you're a person of older age, whether you're someone getting onto middle age like myself, or whether you've just passed your test and you're on an A2 license, this is smart. Because when you ride this thing, it actually feels like a souped up 125, bringing 41 horsepower to the table. It can move. Now, is this a bike you're going to buy if you want to journey on motorways or dual carriageways or across countries? No. If you live in the B-road country, if you want a commuter, or you just want something with a little bit of zip, look no further than Triumph's 400 range. I think you're going to find a lot of riders that are more than happy to trade in their bigger bikes for smaller engines, because the question a lot of the time is less more. Is smaller more enjoyable than a bigger engine? You can get all of the power out of this thing nearly all of the time, no matter what mood you're in, no matter what zone you're in, no matter what environment you're in. But for someone that is 6 feet tall, ergonomically, I don't feel cramped. And that's very important because I have longer arms, I have longer legs, a smaller torso, and it actually feels pretty good. The only thing that feels like a smaller bike though is the slim tank, but that's not a bad thing.
All right, let's start with the Thruxton. Riding position, pretty damn good. It's not super painful on my wrist. I've been riding now for about an hour. It's pretty comfortable as cafe racers go because it has slightly, and it's just marginal, but slightly higher bars than like the original Thruxton and probably more hardcore cafe racers, because this is not a hardcore cafe racer. This is a 400 Indian built Triumph with the look of a cafe racer. Very important. Now Triumph have done really well in the last few years of making 400s, and they have sold a lot of them. I've seen quite a few on the road, especially the Speed 400, which I think is a terrific little bike. This is from the same family, really. Picks up nicely, this bike, it really does. Picks up and wants to go. But this little single is delightful. It makes a really good little racket as well. Surprisingly. I didn't think it would be as loud as it is, but I'm glad it is. And let's have a little listen to it now. As you can hear, this thing, you know, it moves. It's pretty nimble. I mean, considering it's 176 kilos, I'm pretty sure, you know, I thought it would be a bit lighter, to be honest with you, but I think that's just because of all the fairings on top, just adding a little bit of weight. But as it goes, nice smooth single, nimble to move around, like super flickable. Of course it is. It's a 400. But these sort of bikes are really good, in my opinion, for riders that come up from a 125 onto a bigger machine, because they don't feel physically much bigger than a 125. They really don't. I've got quite a lot of legroom here, actually, but as a whole, they don't feel too dissimilar to a 125. The only difference is they pick up and go without scaring the bejesus out of you. And I think that's really, really important for people that jump onto a bigger bike, is that you want to increase the power from a 125, because 14 horsepower is embarrassingly low once you get onto the real world roads. It's also incredibly dangerous at how slow it is to build speed, whereas this bike is slower than like an old Cagiva Mito, for example, by quite some distance, but getting up to speed is not an issue on this thing. And I think that's the difference between the 400s and anything else, really, is that the top speed and equivalent of isn't much different. A 125, my Mrs. Old KTM 125 Duke could do about, I think I did 74, 75 on that. Obviously I was wringing its neck out at top, RPMs. However, this thing sitting at, 6,000, 7,000, it punches a hole through the air for a 400, which is mightily impressive. A lot better than old 400s of the day. And it also sounds good, which I think is very impressive. Pootles along, pop, pop, pop. I personally wouldn't do anything to these 400s. They're so affordably made, I would just leave them as is. I think they're really, really well built for the price point. The fact that most of these bikes are sub £6,000, brand new, all in, is mental to me. Because if this was about when I was learning, I would have jumped at the chance to have a Speed 400 or something like this. Absolutely jumped at it. Position for riding is comfortable. I'm not leaning too heavy on the wrists, and the brakes, that one finger, I tend to lately just use my middle finger to brake, and it's stopping instantly. It stops as quick as it goes, to be honest with you. As soon as you let off the power, this thing just comes to nearly a halt. It kills off very quickly, which isn't such a bad thing. Whole idea of you need power and you need horsepower, I think is a little overrated, to be honest with you. I made a video on this channel saying I prefer torque over horsepower, which obviously I mean the element of your power band that allows your bike to pull so hard it feels, super good. This thing doesn't have grunts and grunts of torque. It does have character. It isn't slow. It is a pretty nippy little bike, I tell you that. You can have a lot of fun on one of these, and with the upright handlebars you could probably sit on one of these for a lot longer than this. What changes could you make to this bike? Well, not loads and loads if you want to keep the price point down. I still, as ever, would preach to every single motorcycle company that makes bikes, can you just put a bloody comfortable seat on these bikes, please? Stop putting wafer thin padding on all of these things. But in terms of price point for this, you can see on the Speedo here, they've got the older Speedo, which I think is on the Speedmaster still, and the 900 Street Twins. You don't get the brand new LED one like on the Tridents and the Speed Twin 1200 and stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of, if I'm honest. I actually prefer the older look of this one, and then of course the Bonneville and My Speed Twins analog clocks I think are arguably one of the best dashes I've seen. I am incredibly biased though. But the reason I like this bike so much, I think, is because the reason I own a Speed Twin is because I always wanted a Thruxton, a 1200 Thruxton R. The problem I have with a bike like that is I like to ride a lot, and my body position and the way I ride, and in general, I found the Thruxton too uncomfortable for more than an hour, and I wanted to ride it a lot more than my body would allow me to. Whereas I feel like the Speed Twin is a Thruxton, but more usable. This thing corners very easily as well, like almost like a super sports bike. And this thing just tips in so delicately. You stick it down in second, glide it through the corner, and watch it just pick up speed. Honestly, the amount of time I've been riding this bike is not long in terms of, you know, miles or anything like that, but bloody hell, it's fun. It really makes me think, you know, these 400s, size matters not, you know. It's the Yoda of bikes. It packs a punch for its class. Would I get rid of my 1200 for... No, of course I wouldn't. However, would I add this to the library of bikes I would own? Yes. Because this bike isn't trying to win you over in terms of horsepower, power delivery, anything like that. It's just a good looking bike that's super fun, and that's what it is. That's what it's meant for. It's meant for the roads I'm riding around now. It's not meant for anything hardcore. I could probably sit on this genuinely for maybe 2 hours in a go, 2.5, which isn't too bad. For a comparison, I can sit on my Speed Twin for about 4 before I'm absolutely knackered and I need a little break. And that's a stock Speed Twin, basically, like stock seat. So pretty good going. It's not vibey, it's not uncomfortable. The riding position for someone like me that's 6 foot is, you know, it's getting onto the smaller side. I do feel like a bit of a giant on it. However, if you are maybe like 5'7", 5'8", great height bike for you. You know, you can flat foot it easy. If you're a lady and you're looking for smaller bikes as well, but you don't want all the boring stuff on the market, you don't want a Honda Rebel, you could flat foot this. Maybe not the Scrambler 400, that's a bit taller. But you could most definitely get the Tracker, the Speed, or if you're feeling adventurous and you want something a little bit more characterful, I would definitely say that's where the Thruxton comes into its own. The Thruxton's a very famous motorcycle, and I do believe that they've pulled off a blinder here. I was worried when they discontinued it for a little bit and they brought in the Thruxton version for the Speed Twin, but when they said we're bringing the 400, I was a bit confused. I said, is that going to be any good? And it is. It's really good. For the price point, I don't know how you can complain, genuinely. My advice, get one. It's terrific.